Great day, students. It's Mr. Sargent here with your Thursday recap video. And it's a special video today because we're going to focus on how to study. All right. The first half of the video is going to be talking about tips and techniques about how to study because tomorrow we have one of our first science quizzes / tests. And I want you all to be fully prepared and ready for it. So stay tuned for great information from this video, possibly some test questions you may want to study. And, well, a great way to help us study is to do a lab so we can see some of the vocabulary and some of the concepts that we've learned in action. So we do have a lab with this as well. So ladies and gentlemen, sit back and let's learn. Now, you all know my history with exams and tests is not good. I would freak out. I would feel unprepared. I would stress out. And tests just sometimes give us a big anxiety. They make us nervous. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have nothing to fear from a test. That's why I'm here today to help you study, help you prepare, and help you do your best on tomorrow's exams. Now, the tips that I'm going to teach you today can help you on any test that you have, whether it's math, whether it's reading, whether it's spelling, whether it's lunch. Well, I don't know how many tests you're going to have in lunch, but if you ever did have a test in lunch, this would help. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is boop, this right here. And if you notice, there are some tips and techniques of how to study. Now, before we get to this, if you're taking an hour to study straight, like a straight hour, that's not going to work. If you're anything like me, we can't sit still, can we? It is very, very difficult to sit still. So if you break up that hour into 15-minute increments, like 15 minutes of studying, maybe 15 to 10 minutes doing something else, 15 more minutes of studying, 15 minutes doing something else, and break it up, it'll make it a lot easier for you. That's my first tip, okay? And that is break up the time. My second, well, they're all up here. And let's take a look. Now we're gonna go through these pretty quickly because I don't want the video to be more than 15 minutes and because it's hard to sit for 15 minutes. The first one is make an ideal ambiance to study. Well, what is ambiance? Well, it's your environment. It's where are you studying? Are you studying in the middle of traffic? Are you studying with loud music and TVs and brothers and sisters and daycare? Listen, we need to find a way for you to find your space. And when you're studying, you need to find your space. Sometimes we need a little music. There we go. Sometimes we need different lighting. Ah, there it is. Most of all, whatever environment you're most comfortable in and most relaxed in studying, well, that's what we need to find. And that's what finding the ideal ambiance means. Next, learn an ideal learning state. What that means is, how do you learn best? Do you learn best by reading a book? Do you learn best by taking notes? Do you learn best by watching YouTube videos of one of your favorite teachers? Whatever way is going to help you study, we need to find that way. Because ultimately, being comfortable when you're studying for the test and knowing what style works best for you is going to help you out so much. It's going to help you remember too. The next three kind of tie in together. Here's the thing. If you're studying, let's say a math test, do you need to study 2 + 2? No, you already know it. When you're studying, it's important not to go over things you already have mastered. If you've mastered 2 + 2, you don't need to study it. But if you haven't mastered 2 + 2, that's what you want to focus on. This last one, identify the unfamiliar points. Whatever information you're not clear with when you're taking a test, that's what you should focus on. Don't waste time going over things that you already know. Focus on the things that you need a little bit more help in. Trust me, it's going to help you. Also, find connections. If you know the easier answers, well, try to find a connection with the easy answers and how they connect to the harder information. Now, another thing that's going to help us out is our study guide. So if you look Here, you will see our study guide, and it has 4 major points. We have vocabulary, we have pictures. Sometimes pictures help us draw or help us learn. We have facts, and we have practice questions. I always like creating a few practice questions, or they could be questions that you still have. Now, if we're talking about our science concepts and what we've been learning about this quarter, we really need to focus on the vocabulary. So in the vocabulary box, there are a few words that you should know. 1 is density, okay? 2, buoyancy. We're gonna actually do a little lab in a minute about looking at buoyancy. 3, states of matter. If you don't know the states of matter yet, these would be pretty good. How about knowing what matter is? That's kind of important. Number 4, maybe displacement. Remember, we learned about displacement from the vocabulary video the other day, in which when you put something in, it rises the water level so you can find the volume. Well, how about volume? Volume is another good one. So if you look, we have quite a few vocabulary that you're going to need to know. Now, another way to help us are the pictures. What pictures should we draw? Well, how about how the molecules look? We know that the molecules of a solid are close together. Of a liquid, they're further apart, but they're still pretty close together. And of a gas, they're very far apart. How about drawing those? That may help you. You never know. How about drawing our experiment last week where we showed how the oil is less dense than the water? Showing that the less dense thing rises to the top will help us understand density even more. So using your art will definitely help you. With facts, how about D equals M divided by V? Or density equals mass divided by volume. That's a good formula to know. I'm not going to ask you to do any math for it, but it's still good to know. And there may be other facts that you need to know about maybe how all liquids aren't the same. How about all metals aren't the same? How about all gases aren't the same? If you notice, there are a number of things that we've gone over this quarter that will definitely help you. How about freezing and melting? Knowing the difference between those. Some good important facts there. And then finally, we have questions. This is where you would put your practice questions that you still want to research. So ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna do these in class, but if you're at home right now and need a little bit more extra practice, this study guide will help you. Now, one thing that always helps me learn a little bit more about the concepts is doing a lab. So let's transport to the lab. So we are in our laboratory today, and I've got my lab coat on. I got my incredible aquarium of science ready to go. And first what I wanted to do was see if we could get Mr. Brick to float on top of the water. But he was telling me the other day he is really scared of water, and I don't want to put him in any danger or put my aquarium in any danger either. So, Mr. Brick, you're going to have to stay off to the side.
No,
I know, Mr. Brick, but next time we'll get you involved in our experiment. So he's going to go off to the side and just watch us while we test our experiment today. Now, this is going to be meant to help us remember what sinks and what floats. It's going to help us remember density. It's going to help us remember all the things that we're going to be tested on tomorrow. So if you look, our question is, how many marbles will it take to sink our bowl? Well, we should probably gather our materials together, shouldn't we? We already have our aquarium, and now I also have 3 different types of bowls. I have a styrofoam bowl, which is very, very light. I have a metal bowl, which is very hard. And I have a plastic bowl, which is a mixture of both. So what we're going to test also is how many marbles will it take to sink each bowl? Now, I'm going to let you make your hypothesis at home, but what we know about solids is solids are more dense than liquid. So they should sink, but because of the shape of the solid, it will float on top of the water. That is until we increase its density by adding weight to it. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the density to the point where it can't float anymore. All right, so already we have talked about sinking, floating, and density. We've also talked about solids, liquids, and well, we know gases are everywhere that we breathe. So I'm gonna let you make a hypothesis. How many marbles will it take to sink each one of these? Now, those are some great guesses. Now it's time to test it. We have our materials, we have our question, we have our hypothesis. It's time to test. So I'm gonna put all 3 bowls or containers inside the aquarium. Now, one at a time, I'm gonna put marbles in. If you notice, they all float because of their shape. But what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add some marbles. And I'm gonna let you see what I'm doing. So as you can see, every time I move the aquarium, it's going to move the water inside, which then moves the bowl. So it might move around a little bit. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start with 1 marble and see what happens. First, we have the plastic. Next, we have the styrofoam. Next, we have the metal. All right? We got 2, 2, and 2. One thing I do notice is that the styrofoam moved a lot more than the other 2. So I'm gonna speed this up and, well, I'm gonna add as many marbles as I can until one of them sinks. So I took the metal bowl out because, well, it wasn't moving at all. I think it's the size difference in the metal pan versus the styrofoam and plastic, but the styrofoam and plastic have sunk a little bit. And what you're gonna see is I'm gonna use the marbles since I ran out of marbles, and we're gonna continue to add them to the plastic and the styrofoam and see which one sinks first. I think we're nearly there, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there we go. The glass sank. Let's add 1 more to the styrofoam just in case. All right, so if you notice, the plastic bowl sank to the bottom. The styrofoam is really, really close. But which one is more buoyant? Now, we remember buoyancy is the ability to float. So can we say that styrofoam is a little bit more buoyant than plastic? Yes, it is. So what did we find out? Well, we found out that the plastic bowl can hold 68 marbles before it sinks, and we know the styrofoam bowl, let me get it right now, can hold at least 70 before it sinks. Now, we could keep going until we sank this, but really, we wanted to find out which one was more buoyant, because remember, buoyancy is the ability to float. Now, when we're studying for our test tomorrow, how can we use an experiment like this? How can we use some of the other experiments? Well, I need you to remember some of the things that you've learned in these experiments, ladies and gentlemen. Knowing that some things float, some things sink, some things are more dense than others. The denser something is, the more it's going to sink. The less dense, the more it's going to float. And also the shape of the item will determine whether or not it floats as well. Now, Mr. Brick, do you think you could still get on one of these?
No!
Well, we're not going to try it today, but we already know because his density is so much and his weight is so big. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but he's dense and he has a lot of mass. Chances are we wouldn't be able to create anything that's going to help him float. So ladies and gentlemen, don't study too hard, but study just enough of the things that you need more practice on in preparation for tomorrow's test. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to see each and every one of you tomorrow.